this is your fault for scheduling this thing in the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. You knew that this was a busy day, and yet you scheduled this thing. Because
I had to schedule this appointment today because you mixed up our schedules, and when my appointment was originally scheduled, you scheduled something different, so I had to move it. Hello and welcome to the Pillow Talks podcast. We're your hosts, Vanessa
and Xander Marin.
I'm a sex therapist with over 20 years of experience.
And I'm just a regular dude. We share the ups and downs in our relationship while giving you step-by-step techniques for improving yours.
Make sure you subscribe for your weekly double date full of totally doable sex tips, practical relationship advice, hilarious and honest stories of what really goes on behind closed bedroom doors, and so much more. It's the sex education you wish you'd had. Today's episode is a listener request. We are going into a hot topic today, defensiveness.
The D word.
The D word. We were talking about something totally different a few weeks ago. I think we were going over a story and we kind of mentioned defensiveness. We touched on it very lightly. And we said, if you want a full episode about defensiveness, I think we were maybe starting to go on a little tangent about defensiveness. We cut ourselves off and we're like,
because it's a big topic.
Yeah, we're like, okay, if you want a whole episode about this, let us know. And boy, oh boy, did you guys let us know. You really wanted us to talk about defensiveness. So we decided to do an entire episode today all about defensiveness, what it is, how it impacts our relationships. We're going into a few stories from our community about times that left them wondering. We actually put up a question box and we said, do you have an experience that has left you wondering, am I defending myself or am I being defensive?
Because that can, there's a fine line there.
So we've got some very interesting stories that we're going to break apart too, and just tell you how to navigate defensiveness in your relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to just venture a guess. I'm going to say something. Maybe it'll sound controversial to some of you, maybe not to many of you, but I think that no matter how self-aware you are, how how enlightened you are in terms of emotional intelligence, everybody acts defensively sometimes. Everybody reacts defensively.
I think it's like impossible not to feel defensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's I think that it's one of the core human emotions, I think, and yeah, it's one of those things where there's no way that we are going to get rid of it entirely. We can be more aware of it, and the more aware we are of things, the better chance we have of doing better. But yeah, I think that, defensiveness is one of those things that as much as we might want to overcome it, we can't ever fully. And man, I reacted defensively just like an hour ago on our way home. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about what defensiveness is and how it shows up for both of us, because it certainly shows up. But first, we got to get into this week's review of the week. Now, if you haven't heard of review of the week, what we do every week is we read a review aloud, because reviews help us so much. They help our podcast grow. They help other people who are just finding our podcast know that we are a legit, awesome, cool, helpful podcast. So here's how it works. If you hear your review read aloud, then you won review of the week. Hell yeah. All you have to do to claim your prize, which is a free masterclass, is DM us on Instagram at Vanessa and Xander, or email us at info@vmtherapy.com. And if you want to leave a review so that you can be entered every single week, just go to the Pillow Talks podcast page on Apple Podcasts, scroll all the way down to the bottom, smash that 5 stars button, and then just leave us a couple sentences about what you love about Pillow Talks. So this week it is, hi Vanessa and Xander. So I've been following you guys for years, and it's been so helpful. After doing some of my own much needed work in therapy, I bought the Ultimate Foreplay Guides for my husband's birthday, and oh my God, our sex life has never been great, but after reading the guide, we've had so much hotter, more connective, passionate sex. For the first time in our 11-year relationship, I thought about how much I'm looking forward to the next time we have sex. I can't wait to keep implementing the techniques. Thank you for everything you do.
Oh, wonderful review. Thank you for sending this.
That's awesome. We aim to please with those Ultimate Foreplay Guides.
We certainly do. So if you've never heard of our Ultimate Foreplay Guides, we designed them to give you step-by-step instructions. This is not vague advice. This is exactly what to do in both written and audio format. Over 100 unique techniques to give your partner maximum pleasure,
Oh, yeah.
the exact spots you need to hit for the best results, a variety of positions to keep things fun and exciting, and beautiful, tasteful illustrations that are easy to follow. So if you're ready to level up your technique, you can get those guides at vmtherapy.com/foreplay. Or you can access the Ultimate Foreplay Guides and a ton of our other products inside Deeper. You can go straight to vmtherapy.com/deeper to check that out, and we will link both of those in the show notes as well. So if you're watching this episode on YouTube, you will see that I currently have Maggie, our black pug, on my lap. And that is because I'm an insane dog person who will let my dog do literally anything. And she is very excited to tell you about our podcast sponsor, Chewy.
They are absolutely her favorite sponsor.
They are.
Of our podcast.
Because they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Literally everything. Like over 100,000 products. Food, treats, beds, you name it. They have the fastest shipping, like 1 to 2 days. They have incredible customer service. You can call them 24 hours a day or night, get advice over the phone, you can chat with them, and an incredible return policy. If your pet does not love anything that you get, they have 100% satisfaction guarantee for a year, no questions asked. We use Chewy to get Maggie and Chauncey's favorite treats, but we also recently started using it for their medications, which our vet recommended to us. She's like, I can sell you the meds, but they're way cheaper on Chewy. And we have just been super impressed, like seriously blown away by how easy it is and how much money you can save.
Yeah, and then you don't have to drive to the vet.
Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com/pillows. That's chewy.com/pillows to save $20 on your first order with free shipping. Chewy.com/pillows. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. So let's kick things off by talking about what the hell is defensiveness in the first place. So defensiveness is the reaction that we have when we feel criticized, attacked, blamed. We feel like somebody is saying something is our fault. And we respond by trying to protect ourselves instead of addressing the issue that's at hand. So it can show up in a lot of ways. You might make excuses for yourself. You might not be willing to acknowledge your words or your actions. Or you might shift blame onto your partner, talk more about, what they did, what they said, rather than acknowledging your own stuff. So
or shifting blame to like external circumstances.
Oh,
That's another big one. Like, oh no, that wasn't me. It was like I was stuck in traffic, or it's this other person's fault, or this thing that happened to me totally out of my control.
Yeah, so like a classic example would be if you told your partner, like, hey, it really hurt my feelings that you forgot our anniversary. And they respond by saying, well, but you forgot my birthday last year. It's like you're not acknowledging your actions. You're shifting it to something else, talking about like your partner instead of yourself.
Yeah, it's like not only that, but like, in fact, it's actually your fault.
And I think what makes defensiveness really tricky is that sometimes there are valid things that you need to explain to your partner. Like your partner might not have the full story of what happened, of what you were thinking, of what your intentions were. So there's, of course, like we all have a natural reaction to want to explain ourselves and like give that broader context to our partner. And so defensiveness can get really tricky. If sometimes it's like, oh my God, I totally, like, I can see how you felt that way, but like, this was what I was intending to do. But you definitely can cross a line into it just becoming straight up defensiveness where you're unwilling to like see your partner's perspective at all. It's like a wall comes up of like, I'm defending myself. I'm putting up the wall. You cannot come over here, stay on the other end of the wall.
Yeah, I know what happens for me often is like, afterwards, if I just fast forward for a minute, if I get, a day later or something, I can very clearly see, okay, there were these elements where, I took an action that hurt you, or that I contributed to this or whatever. Like there are things within my control, and there are potentially external circumstances or other things that things that you did, things, whatever. Like there's a whole variety of things that are at play in a given situation where maybe someone is hurt or upset or disappointed or whatever. The thing, though, is that while that's super clear to me later, there's this whole range of things where the defensiveness really presents is in the moment. It's like your body or your emotions or your brain or some combination of the three overweights all the external things, so that in the moment, it like you might even be aware that, oh yeah, there was like a little part of that was my thing, but like there's so much more that's like all the other stuff. And so like this doesn't really have to do with me. Right. So yeah, it's that protective thing. But yeah, it's like I've realized for me, it's like this overweighting. It's like you have a scale and maybe the scale is even. And it's like your brain is just smashes on the other side of the scale in the short term. And it's like you're blind to your own actions or your own part in something until later. And then often the damage has been done by how you reacted.
I think for me, one of the tricky things that comes up around defensiveness is it actually can bring up a sadness for me of like when you say like, oh, well, you did something or you said this and it impacted me in this way. If it's really different from what my experience or my intention was, there's almost this sadness of like, wow, like you thought that I did that, or like you thought that I would be trying to hurt you in that. Like, I guess we could talk about the defensiveness incident from this morning. It was a really small example.
It was.
But basically what was happening is I have a really tight schedule today and we have a bunch of stuff that we need to do. And so I was asking, my intention was, I was trying to tell Xander, hey, here's my schedule for today. It's going to be tight. And I was trying to like take responsibility for that. Like I had to schedule an appointment in the middle of, you know, when we were supposed to normally be doing other stuff. So I want to acknowledge I'm impacting us. I'm putting a squeeze on us. And I would love to like be partners in trying to be as effective as possible and getting through what we need to get through. And so you had this kind of defensive reaction. I think what came up for you was feeling like I was implying that you purposefully would be trying to slow us down or purposefully would be like not trying to be efficient.
Yeah, you use the word like, I'd love your cooperation in like, you know, getting XYZ done before this time or being really efficient. And yeah, it's like looking back, the word cooperation is a pretty neutral to even like positive word. And in my mind in that moment, when I heard cooperation, I was thinking like, oh, you need my cooperation. So like, is there a part of you that is thinking that like, typically I'm uncooperative when it comes to timing? Like, you know, you're saying that there's a timing issue. And like, of course, the first thing I think of when you say that is, oh, okay, how can I be supportive in helping you stay on the schedule that you need to stay on? And then I'm hearing the thing about cooperation and my mind just immediately went to, oh, so she's saying I'm normally not cooperative. Why would she think that about me?
So yeah, so there's probably like a sadness for you of like, wow, she thinks I'm like uncooperative.
Yeah,
and then
really
for
what
me,
she thinks.
there's also this sadness of like, why would you think that I would think that you are purposely trying to slow us down? Like it just, you know, it's this sort of, I guess it's this sadness of feeling unseen and feeling like us missing each other of like, damn, how did something where my intentions were so good kind of go off the rails? And that was just a very small example. Like we kind of course corrected pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
But we've definitely had much bigger examples where it feels like it totally derails us. So that's how it impacts me often. But let's talk about some other impacts in your relationship. So defensiveness very often just completely shuts down the communication.
Oh, that's totally what could have happened earlier today. Like if we had not quickly course corrected, if I had not been able to quickly be like, yeah, you know what, that was I can see how that word does not necessarily imply that I'm an uncooperative person. Like cooperation in general is a positive thing. Like I can quickly acknowledge, yeah, that was a defensive reaction that I had upon consideration, upon really reflecting on this. Like, yeah, I'm not feeling that. That's not how I want to be. But if I had been really firm, no, you said that and you're always asking me that when things are tight and it's like, you don't trust me, blah, blah, blah. You know, if I'd kept going with it, that would have quickly led to a shutdown in communication. We would probably not be recording this podcast right now because we would like be upset and not feel like we want to be talking to each other or like, you know, having fun recording podcasts about defensiveness.
So it also can really escalate conflict. So, I mean, it can either like shut things down or like fire them up. I think everybody's had an experience of this where it feels like you just start going tit for tat with each other.
yeah.
Like, well, you did this. Well, you did that. Well, you did this. You know,
yeah.
and you're just
yeah.
pulling up everything from the past and hurling at each other.
Oh, yeah. So like, and this is actually so perfect because this is also another road that our conflict totally could have gone down because, interestingly, so I could have been like, all right, well, this is your fault for scheduling this thing in the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
You knew that this was a busy day, and yet you scheduled this thing. So I could have thrown it back at Vanessa.
And then
then you could have thrown it right back at me. Because
I had to schedule this appointment today because you mixed up our schedules. And when my appointment was originally scheduled, you scheduled something different. So I had to move it. And this was the only time for today.
And then I could have, well, you didn't have to, blah, blah. And I could have gotten defensive about that. Well, no, we scheduled this trip with our friends because, we said that these whole dates worked. And so I wasn't, so like, that's how it goes so fast.
Going. It's so fast. I think everybody literally has an experience of like all of a sudden it's like it just goes up in flames so quickly.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell happened?
And then you're like, how did we get here? We're like 10 steps backwards in terms of like things that happened like years ago. And somehow that's the reason why this like tough situation is happening right now.
It also really erodes trust, and it can create a lot of emotional distance between the two of you. If this is a path that you go down frequently in your relationship, it just sends a message that you're unwilling to take responsibility. You don't care about your partner's perspective or their experience. You leave them feeling unheard, unimportant. It just can really lead to disconnect and a lot of resentment too.
Yeah. And then I think it's really like both partners are kind of constantly on edge. Like you're because you don't trust that, you don't trust in the good intentions of your partner necessarily, then you're always on the lookout. Like, oh, was there some subtext here?
Yeah.
Was there an implication here? Like they said this, but like, did they really mean that? And then it's like, you're looking for it. It's like, you're ready to go. And you're just looking for that little spark that's going to like put the whole thing up in flames.
Absolutely. And ultimately, it ends up really blocking growth too. Like if you just get stuck in defensiveness, you're never going to grow, not as a human, not in your relationship. So it can just have some really painful negative impacts. So let's talk about like, how do we manage defensiveness in our relationships? How do we navigate it? For me, the most important thing is to recognize that two things can be true at the same time. So your partner can have an experience, you can have an experience. Those experiences can be completely different from each other, and they are both true and valid and real.
And if you're having trouble remembering that or accepting that, all Vanessa and I have to do is look down. For me, it's right here. I got "and" tattooed on my forearm.
Literally on our bodies to remind us that two things can be true at the same time.
It is
this
an
and this.
It is not an true. Or. It is an and. Life is in, we live in the and.
Mm-hmm. So it really comes down to being able to see and validate your partner's experience, even if you don't agree with it. It is totally okay to not agree with it. So going back to like our example, Xander got defensive about the word cooperate. For me, the word cooperate, like I specifically chose that word because I was like, to me, that implies us working together. It implies me taking ownership for the fact that like, I've got this stupid appointment in the middle of the day. I'm putting the crunch on us. So you and I, let's cooperate together. Like I purposely picked that word. And it's annoying and frustrating to me that Xander didn't like that word and he wanted me to use a different word. So I don't have to agree. I don't have to say, you're right, cooperate was the wrong word to use. I should not have used that. I don't have to agree, but I can still validate your experience. I can see how that might have felt that way to you.
You know what's interesting about that though? I just thought of this. And honestly, I feel like this is an experience most people have had with defensiveness where afterwards you're looking back on it and you're kind of analyzing, okay, how did I actually react in that situation? What was I thinking? Like, in this case, I was thinking I wished that Vanessa had used a different word. I said, oh, I wish that you would use, can I support you, rather than can I be cooperative or whatever? Because for some reason in the moment, I was like, oh, well, that would have felt better. But I'm looking back on it, and I'm like, if you had said, I'd love your support in this, I could have just as easily said, oh, so are you saying I'm usually unsupportive? Is your assumption that if you hadn't asked that I would be unsupportive of us like doing this efficiently today? So it's like, yeah, it's just wild how, that's the tricks that our brain and our body play on us in those, kind of split second moments where it's like in the moment, oh, if you had just said this, it would have been fine. And I'm looking back, I'm like, if she had actually said that without me asking her to say that, I would love to say I wouldn't have gotten defensive, but I probably would have just gotten defensive anyway.
So a couple of things here. Like, one is to assume positive intent. Like, assume that your partner was trying their best and not trying to hurt or upset you. Like, that goes such a long way. And then validate their feelings or their experiences. And again, this is not about agreeing. You can aim for understanding without agreement, but validating your partner's feelings. So I love this sentence. I can see why you would feel that way. It's not saying I agree with you. It's not saying I would feel the same way. It's not saying my way was wrong, your way is right. It's just like, I can see how you would feel that way.
So it's like, I see you, I don't feel you. don't say the second part.
No, but like, I think that's a really great phrase at helping your partner feel validated, feel like their experience is real, but also you holding on to whatever your experience was as well. It just, it shows empathy. It keeps the conversation going. It doesn't shut things down and it doesn't escalate either. Like, people will stop in their tracks if you validate them. Like, yeah, I can see why you would feel that way. And then they're like, what? Like, they kind of like still want to keep arguing, but it stops them in their tracks.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that the biggest struggle that couples have when you're trying to, like if we were the therapist in a couples therapy session trying to help a couple that is really stuck in a defensive dynamic, I think the hardest thing is you can explain that to someone and be like, yeah, it makes sense that, yes, like, understanding doesn't necessarily have to be agreement. Or, you can see it, but you don't have to feel it necessarily. But I think that where people get really stuck is they're like, okay, well, like maybe I can see in the tiniest way how you would feel that way, but that's crazy. Or like most people wouldn't do that. I would never think that way. I would never jump to that conclusion. 99 out of 100 people would never do that. And so therefore you shouldn't. And so it's like, you're trying to tell your partner that the way that they are reacting, the way that their kind of emotional system is working is wrong somehow. And I hate to say it, but like, you can't control that. Like, I can't control that for Vanessa, and Vanessa can't control that for Vanessa. That's just like that's how we are wired. Until we have like AI built into our brains, like that is the way that we are wired. We can't get around that. And so I think that really the work is in understanding, hey, as crazy as this seems to me, as much as I cannot ever imagine, having that reaction, I can see how even there's that 1 in 100 chance that someone could have had that reaction. That person is my partner, and that's how they felt right there. And just being in acceptance of that.
And I would also say trying to take responsibility for even the smallest little piece can really go such a long way too. And again, it's not about saying I'm the bad guy. It's not about falling on your sword, saying you're completely wrong. But just like, even if there's some small piece of it that you can take ownership of, that you can apologize for, that really will stop defensiveness and like arguments like right then and there. Just like, you know what? Yeah, I could have done that a little bit better. Sure, I could have said a different word. I could have handled that differently. Like, just, again, it goes back to the validation of validating your partner's experience, and just being willing to say, I play a role in these things too.
Yeah, and another controversial opinion, I think that I want to say always, but we also say never say always. I think that almost every single time, as much as we don't want to acknowledge it, we almost always play a part, even if it is minuscule, in something negative that happens to us. As much as we want to say it's completely out of our hands, like there's always some small role that we play. And there's always, almost always, trying to be really generous and feel, almost always some seemingly tiny and maybe even feels inconsequential to you, a tiny thing that you could take responsibility for. And I like to think of it as like, this is me keeping my side of the street clean. You know, it's like Vanessa's my neighbor. She's on one side of the street. I'm on my side of the street. Like, you know, it can be a total mess in her yard on the street, but like I'm in control of my sidewalk. I can keep my side of the street clean and I can feel good about that. So it's sort of like, you know, whatever you need to tell yourself. For you, it's like, I want to be the bigger person, or like I identify as a person who takes care of my side of the street, regardless of what the other side of the street looks like. I think that can be a really helpful way to get yourself into that mindset of like, yeah, I'm going to take accountability for my part in this, even if my partner hasn't, and even if they don't or won't. Like I'm going to be the bigger person. I'm going to do my part.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can feel good about. I think that's something you can learn to feel good about. That was so hard for me at first. And ultimately, it ends up something that you can be proud of, which I think is great.
Yeah. We all know that we need to be getting better sleep, but I think most of us struggle with it in one way or another, which is why we are very excited to tell you about something that has made a real difference for us, Beam's Dream Powder. It's a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. I've been drinking Beam pretty much every night. I also have a new sleep tracker tool that I'm using, and my sleep has been out of control, like top-notch A+ scores. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all natural ingredients like reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. No artificial flavors, sweeteners, or unnecessary additives, just clean, high-quality ingredients. And it's designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up feeling amazing. No next-day grogginess, just great, restful sleep.
Plus, it tastes really great. It's like a little nighttime hot chocolate.
It's delicious.
Fun little routine. Plus, they have an awesome little frother that you can get along with your Beam. And
I have an embarrassingly good time using the frother.
I love that frother, man. It is so satisfying to stick that in and get a little zing zing. We talk about getting a little zing on this podcast sometimes, but Beam really brings you the physical zing.
Beam has already improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep, helping people across the country wake up and feel their best. Now, here's the bottom line. Better sleep equals better performance. And Beam is giving our listeners their best offer yet of up to 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/pillow and use code PILLOW at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/pillow and use code PILLOW for up to 40% off. Wake up refreshed, no mystery, just science. Try Beam today. All right, so let's get into some stories from our community. Again, the prompt that we put out was tell us about a situation that left you wondering, am I defending myself or am I feeling defensive?
Well, should we say just for a second, like that, you know, what is the difference between being defensive and defending yourself? What do you think? Like, because we just talked a lot about what defensiveness is, but, you know.
To me, it's about your willingness to take in your partner's experience and perspective. I don't like using the word defending myself at all. I mean, we obviously use that for this episode because it sounds like nice and catchy, but I wouldn't ever say defending myself in real life. I would say like maybe giving context or trying to help my partner understand my experience.
Or like standing up for yourself.
Ooh, that's tricky. Standing up for yourself, I think of that more maybe if your partner's being like pretty aggressive about something. I don't know. That feels like a little more.
But that could be a situation where it's like maybe your partner's gotten too used to you being accommodating. And so then it's like at a certain point, you know, like, yeah, do I need to defend myself?
So for me, I think it really does come back to that willingness to let your partner's perspective in as well. It's like you're trying to fill in the story for them, but you're also being willing to recognize like their experience and let that be real and valid too. Okay, so here's our first story. This is something my husband and I fight about on the regular. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I also work at nights and weekends as an on-call nurse. Ooh, that's a lot. I take care of the house and the kids and cook all the meals, meal planning, grocery shopping, scheduling appointments, everything. And when he has any sort of criticism, I get defensive and it causes a fight every time. Recently, he was getting our daughter dressed and saw that she tore all of her dresses off her hangers. She's 3. She did this 2 to 3 weeks ago and I just left it there. And when he came to me, he asked me why I didn't clean it up and called me lazy. I got defensive because I feel like I do so much already. And when he has something to say, I feel like he should just step in instead of feeling like he needed to say something. If he would have just taken the 2 minutes to clean it up instead of fighting with me, it wouldn't have been a big deal. To top it off, I was working during this fight and he was leaving the next day to go out of town. He gets so angry when I get defensive because he feels like he should be able to tell me when I'm doing something wrong, and I get defensive every time. And I feel like he should just look past the little things because when we have a fight about it, all I feel is undervalued, disrespected, and all around like I'm not good enough when I try so hard to be everything for everyone.
Whew.
Woo!
Heavy.
Who can relate to this one though? I feel like
There's a lot. There's a lot in here.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this loops me back around to what you were just saying a few minutes ago about like sticking up for yourself. Mm-hmm. This actually feels like more of a sticking up for yourself situation. Like, this mom, you are doing too much. Mm-hmm. Like there's an extremely unfair, I mean, I guess we don't know what the dad's work situation is, but it sounds like from this description, there's a really unfair and uneven balance of mental load and responsibility. Like that you are also working. So you both are working. You're taking care of all the household stuff, all the kids stuff, all the meals, all the appointment. Like that's too much.
Yeah. All right. Do you want my opinion on this?
No. Sure. Let's hear it.
So I think that, I think that you are reacting defensively in these situations as you are, as this person is calling out. And I think like, I understand why you are acting defensively here. It makes perfect sense to me. That doesn't make it right, but it makes perfect sense to me. Now, I think that you need to defend yourself, but against something else. Not it. You're focused on, I want, like, can't you just look past these things in the moment so that they won't become a big deal? You're focused on the wrong thing. The thing you already mentioned it. This is a mental load imbalance issue. This is a household responsibilities issue. And by you focusing on, can't you just let this go in the moment? You are glossing over the much bigger, like you're trying to slap a Band-Aid on a flesh wound here. And that Band-Aid, like if he would just allow you to put that Band-Aid on, you might stem the bleeding for a day.
Yeah.
But it's just going to keep on going and going until you address the broader issue. So yes, you absolutely need to defend yourself around, hey, I am doing an unfair amount of the household responsibilities, of taking care of the kids. I am overloaded, and this is not fair and is not acceptable. Like, this is not an acceptable partnership that we have right now, and we need to address that. Because leaving it unaddressed, we are going to keep getting into these situations. I am not ever going to be able to take criticism from you when I am doing everything. The deck is stacked against me in that case. Yeah. Right? So I think that they got to address that. Then I think there's some things that he's got to address too. This idea that like he should be able to tell you when you're doing something wrong, that sounds a little... Like, I'm curious what he would actually say. His perspective there, you might have just written that quickly. That sounds kind of like messed up from him.
I worry that we're getting borderline abusive here, like, because she said he called her lazy. Like, getting into name calling, that's not okay. So this is treading in some red flaggy territory for me, for sure.
Yeah, but I think that, there's got to be a discussion of the mental load, save your defending of yourself for that. Like, you have every right to defend yourself in that case. This is not a fair situation. It's not equitable at all. And of course, you are going to keep finding yourself in these defensive situations that impact both of you when that happens.
Yeah, it's like sometimes the defensiveness can be illuminating. Like, you're clearly defensive about how much stuff you are doing because you're doing too much stuff. It's not this random like, oh, how weird that I would get defensive about that. It's like, no, the defensiveness is showing you something here. So this is a bigger conversation to have. It's not just about the defensiveness. It's how you guys are sharing your responsibilities.
Yeah. And I think that this is one of the toughest things when it comes to mental load and having these conversations. But we were just talking about needing to take responsibility or accountability for your part in this. And as hard as this is to hear, like, when there is a mental load imbalance in a relationship, both partners have a hand in that. And as much as this sucks, and as much as you probably didn't intend for this to happen at the beginning, I think that, like, the easiest way to start this conversation is say, hey, like, I can see the ways in which I have allowed this situation to get to this point by taking on more and more, by not sitting down and having this conversation with you earlier, giving you the impression that this is an okay split of things. But I'm realizing that was on me. That was on me for allowing it to get to this situation. I can see now that this is that this is too much, that this is a problem, and like I'm no longer okay with this. Because if you just come right at him and say, hey, this is not okay, then he will then react defensively and say, oh, how come you never said anything before? Or like, you allowed it to get to this. So it's like, we got to preempt that by being like, you know what? I totally have a lot of responsibility in us getting here. I see that. That's on me. And I'm not okay with this going forward. We got to figure out how to split this up so that this type of stuff doesn't happen.
Whew. Okay. That was a big one. All right. Let's look at our next story. So yesterday I was making pasta for dinner. I went to boil the water and I saw that it was a little brownish.
Well, I like the specificity here.
I know. We found out that a pipe had broken in the neighborhood and we should run the water for 30 minutes prior to using. Wow.
I don't quite understand.
30 minutes?
I don't really. That's
a lot of water.
Interesting. Why would 30 minutes solve the problem? But okay, whatever. We'll take that for what it is.
We also decided to run it through the Brita filter as well, but we would need like 3 or 4 pitchers of filtered water to boil the pasta. So I pour some water into the Brita and walk away to another room while it's filtering. After a few minutes, my husband sees that it was done and pours the filtered water into the pot and refills the Brita. He leaves the room. I come back in and see that the water is still filtering, but don't realize it was a new batch of water. I thought the water in the pot was the dirty water from before, so I proceeded to dump it in the sink. My husband sees me and shouts, "No, that's clean water." I said, "Why didn't you tell me you switched it?" He says, "Why didn't you ask me before tossing it?" He says I'm being defensive about my mistake, and I said he doesn't know how to communicate. Woo! Both of us feel we are each 100% in the right, and I see where he's coming from, but I wasn't being defensive.
Ooh, defensive about defensiveness.
I was defending myself because he didn't tell me he poured the clean water in the pot. How was I to know if I didn't see him and he didn't communicate? It's not rare that he helps in the kitchen, so I guess I could have asked. I don't know. Who's right?
Wait, I like we are both certain that we are 100% right, but I don't know who's right. I like you. I like this person.
This is a fun little example. Okay.
Yeah, this is real. This is like the polar opposite of the last one. Wow. Okay. What do you think? I went in hard on the last one.
I don't think either of them are in the wrong here. It's so funny because I feel like we so often hear from couples saying like, if you see something needs to be done, just do it. And then here's an example of like, he saw that something needed to be done and he just did it, which is great.
Yeah.
But then it was like,
damned if you do, damned if you don't.
You should have told me that you did it. Like, I think that this is such a perfect example of like the funny little arguments that we get into in relationships. And all of a sudden you're having this big old brawl and you're like, how did this start over the Brita water filtering? So I don't think either person is, necessarily, their actions weren't in the wrong here.
I would say, honestly, I would just say both of them are being defensive in different ways. He's accusing her of being defensive, but he is also being, they're both defensive because it's like, oh, you should have told me. Oh, you should have asked me.
No, I don't think so. It just says, my husband sees me and shouts, no, that's clean water. I don't think he was being defensive. I think he was just literally saying like, no, don't throw that away. Like I filtered that one.
Yeah, but I'm assuming he must have said that after she actually dumped it. Like it was like
she was in the
mid dumping. No, but I mean, it's like he's being defensive after the fact, being like, oh, you should have asked me if it was clean water, versus her saying, I mean, I think the reality is, both of these people, and I think this is the important part, is they are focused on each other when in reality, they are both actually upset about the general situation that they are in because of this pipe that broke in their neighborhood. And so, it's like they are getting distracted by each other and, yelling at each other rather than them both being like, man, this situation that we are in where we have to Brita filter our water and we don't have a large enough Brita filter to fill up a fucking pot of pasta. Like this sucks. And now it's going to take a couple minutes extra because I accidentally dumped it out. We had different ideas about like whether I should ask or you should ask. They're both totally valid. Mm-hmm. Both valid ideas of how that should happen. Though, yeah, I mean, in reality, it's confused by the fact that he doesn't help out very much. So you don't have any precedent for how this works. Mm-hmm. Plus, you don't have any precedent for it because this pipe has never broken before today. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is just a simple, can you guys be like, you know what? Can we be a team against this problem and be like, hey, this sucks. Mm-hmm. This pipe broke. We are at the mercy of this pipe and it sucks and we don't like it. But, yeah, can we just move on together?
Okay, let's switch things up. We're going to go from boiling pasta into latex fetish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these are the kinds of twists and turns that Pillow Talks takes.
The joys of our life, our business. I love it.
Okay, my partner is exploring a fetish in latex. I wanted to be supportive, so for Christmas, I asked him to buy me an outfit that he would like me to wear. He gave me a website that specialized, and when I saw it, I made a comment about it being a lot, purely meaning that it was quite overwhelming at first. This made him a bit defensive and upset because he thought this was me saying I didn't want to get involved or was judging his choice. I had to really talk him down and remind him that actually this was a poor choice of words.
Oh, this is a good one. I mean, I think that this is one where I think that both of them could just work on getting to understanding rather than agreement necessarily. Because I think that, like, I totally understand how it makes perfect sense that he would act a bit defensively. He's leaning into a new kink. He's probably working through some shame, some embarrassment around it. And so just hearing his partner say, oh, this is a lot. Of course, I can understand how in the moment he might think, oh, you're telling me I'm a lot. My kink is a lot. This is too much for you. I already maybe have some internalized shame about this that I'm working through, where it's like, oh, so you're not supportive of me. You wish that I wasn't like this. You wish I didn't like this. So of course, all these things can come up. I mean, and I think this is a great example of where like the goal is not like to never be defensive. The goal is to understand why we are defensive. Mm-hmm. And I think the greatest gift that we can give to, a partner who's acting defensively is be like, hey, I can totally understand how you reacted defensively. Of course, I get it that, there's this shame or this embarrassment. I get it that, it felt momentarily like I was saying something that, I wasn't intending to say. Mm-hmm. Here is what I was intending to say. I can totally understand how you felt that way. And I hope that you can understand how that's not what I was intending, and that, therefore it is not how I'm feeling going forward. Like I am not actually judging your kink. I'm not saying that, you're too much for me or any of these things. I think though that, what I'm worried about at the end of this, the person is saying, I really had to talk him down and remind him that actually this was a poor choice of words. I'm a little worried that this person is kind of trying to brush over his understandable kind of embarrassment or like the understandableness of his defensive reaction and be like, no, you shouldn't have felt that way because as soon as I said, oh, that was a poor choice of words, that it should have erased all that hurt. I think we've gotten into this trouble a lot, or, I have, because I am compared to you, I'm a more quick to apologize person. So I will see that I've hurt you by something that I've said, and I'll be like, oh my God, that was such a poor choice of words, or I didn't mean, I meant something else. I'm so sorry I said that word. And in my mind, I'm like, I said the apology. Now she has to stop feeling that way, but she'll still be feeling upset. She'll still be processing those feelings. And for me, I've had to come to realize, oh yeah, no, she had the experience that she had. She's going to feel how she feels. There's nothing that I can say that can change that. I can't go back in time and change the words. So therefore I can't go back in time and erase the whatever feelings it is that Vanessa had. So I think that's really true in this situation. And so I think, the person writing in, I would love for you to try to find a little more patience with your partner and be like, hey, yeah, of course he felt all these things, and it's going to take him some time to process this. He's literally in the midst of exploring this kink and kind of processing all this stuff. So we can't expect a just boom, oh, I'm sorry, cool, slate's wiped clean.
Yeah. It can take some time. I'm with you on this one. Like, I totally understand why that brought up feeling defensive for him. Like, it's a sensitive thing, and to hearing it's a lot. Like, I totally understand how it went to he felt judged and felt upset. And yeah, I think sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to let your partner feel their feelings, and the feelings will dissipate once they feel their feelings. All right. So if you have ever wondered, am I being defensive or just defending myself? Now you don't have to guess, and you don't have to wait for us to do defensiveness part 2. We have a very cool tool that you can use. Vanessa AI.
What?
So if you haven't heard about this, we just launched our brand new membership called Deeper. And Vanessa AI is just one of the many powerful tools inside. It might be my favorite one, though.
It's
really cool.
It's pretty awesome. And like, we are only beginning to scratch the surface on what is going to be possible with this.
So what we did to build Vanessa AI is we trained an AI model with literally everything I have ever created.
Yeah, so everything you ever created or written or said.
Yeah.
That's like publicly available.
Every course, every guide, every podcast, private Q&As with our community, like everything. So we trained it on all of my techniques and ideas and wisdom, and we are giving you complete access to Vanessa AI if you join Deeper.
And to be clear, it's also been trained, I think, on everything I have said.
True.
Too.
Yeah, I just take credit.
It's in Vanessa's voice, though, because we
could only do one. Maybe we'll do a Xander AI in the future too, but for now we could only do one. So it is just this absolutely incredible tool that you can use to get expert advice, to get tools for your relationship. You can ask it so many questions. You can ask
it like any question.
Anything,
the sky's the limit.
Anything you want. You could say like, hey, my partner and I are having date night, and last time we had date night, we had nothing to talk about. So like, give me some interesting conversation prompts.
You can give it more details about your relationship, your interests, stuff that you're into, things that are happening for you, and it will give you even better ideas for things. Like, it can give you general stuff. It can also give you as specific advice or suggestions or tips as you are willing to get based on how much detail you're wanting to give it.
You could ask it to give you tools and strategies for developing better body confidence, for learning how to give a better blowjob. You can say, I want to initiate with my partner, but I don't know what to do. You could, let's say you and your partner got defensive and had a fight. You could turn to Vanessa AI and say, how do we repair? How do we fix this fight? Like, literally anything. It could even you could say like, come up with an 8-week plan to help my partner and I feel closer to each other.
Yeah, and you can literally during those 8 weeks, you can tell it, hey, these things really worked. These things you suggested haven't been working so well. Like, continue to tailor the plan based on what's working and what's not working in my relationship. And yeah, I mean, like, it learns about who you are, what you are into, what your partner's into, what works for each of you. So it can all it can do is give you better and better advice. I mean, it's like literally being a client of Vanessa's. Like if you were to
But
see Vanessa,
better, because
you
it's
can
24/7 access. Like,
Yeah, 'cause
if you were a client, you were seeing me for 50 minutes one time a week. That was it. But this is like literally, I'm just in your back pocket. Any moment that you have a question, that you're feeling unsure, that you want an idea, a resource, like it's there.
Yeah, and you can
immediately.
type. You can chat via like text type with it. You can also talk to it, and it will talk.
So cool.
Vanessa
will.
AI will talk back to you.
It's really wild. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling technology. We've been playing with it. I've had my family play with it. Like everybody's minds have been blown by what it is capable of. It's so freaking cool. So I cannot wait for you to try it out yourself. It's just, I mean, it's revolutionary. It's totally game changing. It's a completely different way of getting tools, resources, help than anything that has ever existed. Like it's so cool.
Yeah, and we're just jumping in head first, like with the new technology. I know, like, you know, we could be resistant to it, or we could lean into it and get ahead of the curve. And I think that, you know, if you are willing to try this out, the sky's the limit for how much help you can get from this, how much support you can get from this.
Also, I want to mention it's totally private. Like I know it can be really vulnerable asking these questions. That was actually one of the reasons I stopped seeing couples one-on-one, because I knew like it's just such a tough ask to get people to come in here in person and talk about all these details, these incredibly intimate details of their lives. So it's totally private. You can just ask it, you know, talk to it whenever you want, and it's just between the two of you. So you can check that out at vmtherapy.com/deeper. And again, that is just one small part of what Deeper is all about. Like there's so much more.
Yeah, I mean, this membership is really the culmination of everything that we have done over the last many years. You can get access to almost all of our courses and our guides, our kind of like 5 keys to lasting intimacy methodology that, you know, we think is really the game-changing structure for how to improve your relationship piece by piece, day by day, kind of like getting the most bang for your buck. And that's like, we walk you through that in this membership. Plus, we're going to be showing up live every month. We're going to be in there chatting in the community section. Like there's just so much. We're so excited about this.
So once again, you can go right on over to vmtherapy.com/deeper to check that out. And we'll also have that link for you in the show notes.
All right. Well, that is all for today's episode of Pillow Talks. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you did not get defensive listening to this episode. But if you did, just take a deep breath and join us again next week, because we release new episodes every Thursday.